Also detailed the freeing of the way for more women to return to work, with eligible households being offered 30 hours of free childcare per week for every child over the age of 9 months.
We have never seen before such a comprehensive attempt to say that in this country, if people want to work, we should take away the barriers. And that doesn't matter if you're an older person, someone who's disabled, someone who's looking for work, a parent worried about childcare costs. The government is on your side. If you want to work, we want to help you.
That was Jeremy Hunt, and in response, the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer called the budget a sticking plaster.
His opening boast was that things aren't quite as bad now as they were in October last year after the kamikaze budget. And the more that he pretends everything is fine, the more he shows just how out of touch they are. After 13 years of his government, our economy needed major surgery. But like millions across our country, this budget leaves us stuck in the waiting room with only a sticking plaster to hand.
Well, in other news today, in reaction to events in the United States, the London Stock Exchange suffered its worst losses since the start of the COVID pandemic as fears of a banking crisis intensified. The FTSE 100 closed down today more than 292 points as global banking stocks fell just days after the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank in the United States. Credit Suisse was one of the worst affected lenders, seeing its share price drop by a quarter to a new record low. And it comes a day after the bank told investors it had failed to identify any risks in its financial reporting. That's your latest news headlines. We're back in an hour with more. Let's get back to Nigel Farage in Doncaster.
Good evening. Yes, we're here in Doncaster with a live audience. It's been Jeremy Hunt's spring budget today. We don't care what people in Westminster think. We want to come out and meet real people in the country to get their reaction. Now, there was our Chancellor. He was so breezy. He was so jolly. He was so optimistic. I mean, he wasn't quite as boosterish as Boris, but for all the world, you wouldn't have thought this is one of the biggest strike days we've had in the last 40 years. You wouldn't have thought the London stock market was plummeting, the worst it has since the beginning of the pandemic. The big disappointment with the budget, I think, is that every single detail of it had been launched and leaked already. So we kind of knew what the content was going to be. He delivered it. But there was one thing I hadn't expected. A Brexit pub guarantee. Well, how about that? Now, I mean, if ever there was something to cheer up Nigel Farage, surely it was that. Well, the price of a pint may be a little bit cheaper in the pub. What they didn't tell you was that from the 1st of August, there are huge increases on bottles of wine, on spirits at home, and all the rest of it. What did I think overall? I don't think there was an ounce of radicalism in Jeremy Hunt's body. I think the truth of it is that the tax burden will continue to go up. We are now, as individuals, particularly those that are working, more taxed than we've been at any time since Clement Attlee was there in number 10, and we're going back 70 years. There were one or two things that might work. You know, the childcare reforms, if that gets more women back to work, that is a very good thing. But I thought Hunt's demeanour against the reality of where we are made a very, very big contrast. But here we are in Doncaster, and we're in a place where there are 3 parliamentary constituencies, and one of them went Conservative in 2019. And Nick Fletcher is the first Conservative Member of Parliament in the Doncaster area for 55 years. He represents the Don Valley, and if you believe the pollsters, he's going to get wiped out at the next general election. They're all going to get wiped out at the next general election. I did say, if you believe the pollsters. But what is for certain is that for Nick's future in politics and for the Conservative Party, the economy will be at the heart and centre of how we vote in the next general election, which will come up at some point in the last half of next year. Nick, thank you very much indeed for joining me here on GB News. And I understand this building, this club, means rather a lot to you.
Yes, that's right, Nigel, and thank you very much for having me. I met my wife here some 33 years ago. I hope I've got that date right. And I actually, the night of my wedding, we had in this actual room. My father worked here, both my brothers worked at ICI Fibres, which is the place that we are now, and my mother-in-law worked here too. So yeah, lots of fond memories at this place.
Good, well that's the easy bit done with.
Yep.
Nick, you know, your constituents, whether they're working, retired, you know, running a small business, how do they look at this budget today? I mean, it's all well and good saying that if you're in the top 1% of earners, you can put more money into your pension scheme. And yes, it's a relief that the fuel duty escalator has not kicked in and it's not going to cost any more to fill the car up. But if you want to drink a glass of wine at home from the 1st of August, if you want to buy a packet of fags, I mean, actually, your income allowances have been totally frozen, dragging a lot of people like nurses into 40p rates of tax. I mean, let's face it, however sunny and optimistic Jeremy Hunt may have been, it's pretty tough for your constituents still, isn't it?
Well, I mean, first thing you could do, Nigel, is stop smoking. I mean, that'd save you an awful lot of money every week.
I thought the Conservative Party believed in freedom of choice. You sound like a big state socialist to me.
Well, there's a certain amount of personal responsibility there as well, isn't there? And I'm all for that too. I mean, the doctors' tax, as we've called it, with the pension. Look, if people are not getting their hip replaced, if they're not getting the surgery that they need, and they're not getting it because it's not worthwhile, GPs, I mean, and surgeons going to work because they're taxed absolutely unbelievably high, then this is actually a way forward. And somebody who's on an operating table is not really going to care. They're just going to be extremely
I get
thankful.
your point. If you're in the top 1% of earners, then today's been quite good news, at least on that regard. But what about everybody else?
Well, as I say, I think it's been very well for everybody else who was waiting for that operation to be done, because obviously those waiting lists will drop now.
If it works.
It will work. I've had that. I speak to consultants, and it's definitely an issue. So, yeah, I mean, obviously I don't want to talk about the top 1%, but that's how it will affect the people of Doncaster. They will be able to get their operations. So that's good news.
And GP appointments, will they get those as well?
Well, hopefully so, yeah. I mean, there's an awful lot of work going off with GPs at this moment, with the GP practice, and I spend an awful lot of time with them. Obviously, my email inbox is full of complaints about GPs, but I'm actually going out and seeing these GPs, and I'm sitting down with them and saying, look, how can we make this better? I mean, one of the easiest things that GPs can do is make it easy for people can actually get in contact with them. People just want to talk and don't want to be sat on a line for half an hour at 8 o'clock in the morning.
But
so we are doing that.
But if I'm in business, say I'm a medium-sized business, I'm employing men and women, I'm making a reasonable profit, I've just seen my tax bill go up by 30%, a 30% increase in business taxation. I mean, this is anti-business, it's anti-investment. It's almost hard to believe that a party that calls itself Conservative is doing this.
Yeah, it is difficult, and I understand that.
It's difficult, all right.
Yeah, we've just had a £407 billion spent on trying to keep all these businesses up and running, and many businesses are only here because of the government's help during COVID. All the jobs, the furlough, the self-employed income support scheme money, all the plasterers, electricians and the builders that were told to down tools and go home, they all got grants to help them through that. So, I mean, we can't forget that. Granted, it's tough. I mean, the corporation tax has gone up to 25%, but I believe that's tapered from 19. So lots of the one-man bands out there are earning less than £50,000 a year. They'll still only pay 19% corporation tax. It does go up to 250,000. So it is tapered along the way. And also, we've put the tax relief in so that when people do buy items for the business, they get 100% tax relief.
That was there already and at an even bigger level.
No, I don't believe it. Well, it was there on the super tax.
Ultimately, I get your point.
Yeah.
You decided to lock us down. That was your government policy. The Swedes took a different approach. People in Florida took a different approach. We have a massive, we are paying for lockdown. It was one of the most catastrophic mistakes, I think, ever seen in this country. I mean, boy, we have so much to thank. We have so much to thank Matt Hancock for. What a lovely man. You're facing the electorate. It's going to be, 15, 18 months' time. Can you win this seat again of Don Valley?
Yeah, I believe so. I don't think they've had a member of Parliament who stood up for Doncaster like that I have. I mean, the statistics prove it from the amount of times I spoke about Doncaster. I don't think they've had a member of Parliament who's fought hard for Doncaster. We've now got a levelling up bid coming forward, which was announced today, so that's another 20 million for Doncaster. We had 18.6 million in the first round of levelling up for Doncaster, and now we're going to hopefully get an £80 million investment zone, which could bring the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre, which is just down the road in Sheffield. It could bring that to Don Valley. We get that to Don Valley, we could then end up with Boeing in Doncaster.
Right, well, I tell you what, if you do, you'll be in better shape than I think you currently are now. But Nick, either way, thank you for joining us here on
Thanks
GB News. Thank you very much indeed. Now, let's get some views. Let's get some thoughts from some professional economists. I'm being joined in just a moment by Roger Gewald, and he's a guy that in the past has worked as an advisor to the Bank of England, an advisor to the UK Treasury, but I think significantly and importantly, he's been a consumer champion for many, many years. Roger, thank you for joining us today. Big picture, you know, I made the point earlier on that Hunt was so jolly. I mean, you'd think we're living through an economic boom. He was so happy. Actually, what do you think on the big picture this budget does for our economy looking ahead?
Not a lot. I think it was pretty disappointing. The realism is that we've got a banking crisis going on. Sorry, I lost my voice a bit.
It's all right.
And more banks may fail. And of course, he also forgot to mention that today is the biggest industrial strike since the strike started. It was like going through the First World War trenches for me to get here from London today. It's unbelievable. It's just unrealistic. The government's policy, all politicians' policy seems to be for energy and the rest of our cost of living and other problems, to have gaslighting. That's what we're being gaslit. We're being told stories. Terrible things are going on. I have a real concern for the lack of leadership in the world. I can't think of any inspiring leader except perhaps Zelensky, and we'll probably be told sooner or later that he's torturing Russian brown bears in his back garden or something terrible.
Let's hope not.
Let's hope not,
yeah.
but it's all so dismal. I think corporation tax is the biggest problem, is the biggest disappointment. Now everybody's speaking about corporation tax and how it affects businesses and corporations, but I'm sorry, I've been here a long time, I know how to behave, but I'm just going to be very frank. These people are so stupid that they can't see beyond their noses. Who's going to pay that corporation tax? You've just talked about a 30% slam.
Yep.
Now, I run a cake shop. I sell my cakes for £1.15. They cost me £1 to make. You come along and take 30% of my margin, so now I'm only making 10p. What in the world do these folks, and nobody is discussing this, who's going to pay that? We are.
These people. Yeah, all of these people in here tonight. Yeah.
The mugs. Yeah. The mugs. Rishi Rich gave us a 5p tax cut. Let me talk about petrol for a moment. When petrol was $1.80, 56% of that was government tax. It's a triple tax. Now think about it. This is not widely known, I'm told. There's fuel duty. There's VAT, and the VAT is on the fuel duty and on the petrol, so it's tax on tax. And what do you pay for your petrol with? The pounds in your pocket that you've already paid PAY on. And they couldn't give us more than 5p. It didn't even touch the sides.
Yeah, and other European countries actually gave a lot more relief.
Germany gave, what was it, 37?
Yeah, I'm going to say 25p wasn't uncommon. Yeah.
It didn't even touch the sides. There was no enforcement. We ran a poll on social media. 80% of people could not find a neighborhood petrol station that they used that had reduced the prices by 5p. It's absolutely insane. So he gives us these little sops one by one and tells us, smug Jezza with this incredible wide-eyed happy look. He's telling me everything's all right. Forget the banks failing and financial crisis coming. Forget the war in Ukraine. Forget the fact that nobody can get anywhere today. I'm waiting for him to give me a pony for Christmas. But he's telling us everything is wonderful. And this corporation tax, we are going to have it for dinner. We are the ones on cost of living crisis that keeps us from breathing and is going to crush us even more. Don't these geniuses even think about that?
Well, what he does say, the final thought, if I could with you, Roger, final thought, he says that inflation will have fallen to 2.9% by the end of the year, so everything's going to be okay.
3.2, 2.9, okay. This is another of my favorite subjects. We have in this country what's called cost push inflation, as you know. Cost push inflation. So there's demand pull inflation. That's where you, madam, go out and buy too many handbags. You go to the restaurant with your family 3 times a week, and it's got to stop. Raise interest rates, make money more expensive, people will stop spending.
So in short, is he right to think inflation will fall that far?
Yeah, but it's got nothing to do with him.
Right, okay.
This is cost push inflation, which always falls by itself. In 2000...
Give me. We're out of time, Roger.
Okay.
Marks out of 10 for the Chancellor today.
2.
2. There we are. Well, on that note, we're going to take a break. I'll be back with you in a minute with Liam Halligan. He'll give us his view. We're then going to get the audience engaged. Back with you in a moment.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Before we get back to the budget, there's one story I must touch on very quickly. It's my What the Farage moment of the day. RAF Scampton in Lincolnshire, not too terribly far away from here. It was, in World War II, home to 617 Squadron. What does that mean? It means Guy Gibson. It means the Dam Busters raid that took off from that very RAF base, went and bombed the dams and came back having lost about a third of their aircraft. And men, it is a place of huge historical and cultural significance. It closed down last year as an RAF base. It will now be a holding centre for young men that cross the English Channel in small boats. We're even told that Guy Gibson VC's office is being cleared out to make room for all of this. It is absolute cultural desecration. It shows the mess we're in as a country. Far from it becoming a refugee centre, it should be a museum where we honour these incredible people who did what they did. OK. Now joining me is Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor. Liam, your take on the budget, please.
Well, it's great to be here in Doncaster, in Yorkshire. I thought the budget was a bit of a damp squib, or even a squib underwater. It was that damp. I didn't see much here at all for ordinary working people, apart from the help with childcare.
Which looked interesting.
I do think that was well-intentioned. It was also designed to wind Liz Truss up, because it's what she's been trying to do when she was in government for many, many years. But it seems as if most of the money, the extra fiscal headroom that the Chancellor has, because growth has turned out to be not as bad as everyone expected, because the economy has turned out to be more resilient than everyone expected, certainly the ever-gloomy Office for Budget Responsibility, the Chancellor seems to have used that fiscal headroom to give a massive tax bung to very, very wealthy families who are saving for their pensions. He's increased the tax-free allowance of money you can put in your pension in a single year from £40,000 to £60,000, and he's scrapped the lifetime allowance altogether. It was going to go up to 1.8 million, and now it's limitless. These are mind-blowing sums for the vast majority of ordinary working people here in the UK. And the idea that you spend the money that you've got in the middle of a cost of living crisis by making life a lot more comfortable for, frankly, the upper middle classes seems to me politically inept.
He didn't put petrol up. There could be a few pence off a pint of beer, but a lot more for a bottle of wine or a bottle of gin or whatever it may be. I mean, if we cast our minds forward to the next election, these folk in this room are actually going to be paying an even bigger tax burden than they are now. Because allowing for inflation, he's frozen, hasn't he, all the allowances, and people doing ordinary jobs are being dragged into the 40p tax band, which used to be for the top earners in Britain.
This is what we call fiscal drag. It's not a particularly difficult economic concept, but it's not widely understood. At least the Treasury hopes it's not widely understood. If you keep the tax-free allowance at 12.5 grand for years on end, if you keep the rate at which ordinary working people stop paying tax at 20p and start paying tax at 40p, that's just above 50 grand a year. It's going to stay there till 2028, Nigel. Yeah. That means more and more people, an increase from 4 million people to 8 million people, getting on for a quarter of the workforce, will be paying the top rate of tax. I'm talking about middle managers. I'm talking about not particularly senior teachers, policemen and women, people working in the public sector, in, not hugely high-powered jobs. These people are not meant to be paying tax at 40%, and yet they are. And as we just heard from Roger there explained brilliantly, and then the money you have in your pocket to spend, that's already been taxed, and then you're paying VAT on loads of things, and then duty on top of that.
We're going to cover
too
more
much. That's why the tax burden's at a 70-year high.
We're going to do more of this in a minute, but before we go to the break, big local economic issue here with regards to the airport. What's going on?
Well, in my reporting for GB News, I try and get out of London as much as I can. I know I've got a London accent, it's not my fault. And so I thought I'd take this opportunity of coming up to see you tonight, to spend tomorrow in Doncaster, and we're going to be looking at this issue. I know it means a lot to a lot of people in this room, of Doncaster Sheffield Airport. Yeah. I've spent a lot of time in recent years up in the northeast, Tyneside, Teesside. I've seen what Teesside Airport championed by Tory Mayor up there, Ben Houchen, has done to that part of the world. Look, we are in the heart of England. Yorkshire is the heart of England, and in many ways, Doncaster is the beating heart of Yorkshire. It's crazy that we haven't got a regional airport there to bring in more investment, to bring in lots of enterprise to this part of the country.
I think, Liam, you're absolutely right, and you couldn't have praised this audience more, could you, really, just now? Back in a moment with a Q&A with this live audience.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are going to do some Q&As. I've got Liam Halligan with me. We've got a few people who've volunteered, desperate to ask questions. We're going to begin with businessman Tony Harrison. If we can get the microphone to Tony, please.
Thank you. Will the increase in corporation tax from 19% to 26% stifle investment in the UK going forward?
Quickly, before Liam, the expert, comes in, you know what? If I could invest in Dublin and pay 12.5%, they speak English, good education system, good workforce, I think I might go to Dublin. Sorry, Liam, your show.
I think this is a huge mistake by the Chancellor. It's not just the big business titans that pay corporation tax. If you run a small plumbing company, if you run a small chain of restaurants in the regions, you're paying corporation tax. The taper between 50,000 and £250,000 is very steep. You start paying 25% 25% corporation tax. This is the first rise in corporation tax, Nigel, since the days of Dennis Healey with his funny eyebrows. Silly Billy. Is this really the right time when we're trying to get the economy out of the hole it's in, rescuing our economy, businesses we kept alive with billions of pounds of taxpayers' money, and now we're killing them off with a badly timed rise in corporation tax?
Quick thought from you, Tony?
Absolutely, I agree. Ireland, 12.5%. We're going to lose business to Ireland, absolutely.
And we already have.
AstraZeneca.
Absolutely. Massive investment, hundreds of millions of pounds. Cheshire was expecting that. It's going to the Republic. Tony, thank you. Let's go to Roy next, who's got a question for us.
There was no mention today in the budget about foreign aid. Now, would you abolish it? Would you increase it? Would you leave it as it is? My view is that it should be abolished. And the point is, I'm not saying that we shouldn't help these countries, but the other way to do it would be to support the charities that go out there. The money then would be got to the people on the ground and wouldn't be hived off by these governments.
Roy, it's really interesting. Here's an issue where everybody in Westminster thinks foreign aid's marvellous. In fact, David Cameron said one of his biggest two achievements as Prime Minister was increasing the amount of foreign aid. You go out into the country, people feel differently. I think disaster relief is one thing, and charities can do that, but equally government can help. I think those poor people in Turkey, what they've been through, if we could give them money very quickly or get something to them very quickly, we should do that. But giving annual cheques to corrupt governments, someone once said that foreign aid was poor people living in rich countries giving money to rich people living in poor countries. And I've always worried about that. So, Roy, I wouldn't abolish it completely. I would keep it flexible, but the way we've been doing it, the sheer sums we've been giving, and frankly, you know, giving money to countries that had their own nuclear programs, giving money to countries that might even pose a threat to us, giving money to China. I mean, the whole thing's crackers. Roy, thank you. Let's keep going. Nicholas Evans is a businessman. Nicholas.
Yeah, as a fintech.
1 second.
Thank you. As a fintech business, I've only been started up 2 years, just into sort of profit. Now, I've got no high concerns about the corporation tax, but also the cut on the grants that are available to me as well. Now, all of a sudden, that's totally disappearing for me.
Yeah, let's also remember, Nicholas, for the self-employed, those running their own businesses, you're running a limited company, it isn't just the increase in corporation tax, there's quite a significant increase also in dividend tax. Because people pay themselves in dividends from limited companies, that's going up as well. I mean, the 1st of April, really, for small business and medium business, it's a real triple whammy that's going on out there.
Well, small and medium-sized enterprises, Nigel, they account for half of all the growth in this country, 2/3 of the employment in this country, and they're hotbeds of innovation and thus future growth and productivity gains. A lot of companies were born in lockdown, with people using the adversity of lockdown, getting their creative juices going and trying to launch a business, often family-run and family-owned businesses. That's why this rise in corporation tax is so badly timed. There's also many people working in your sector, sir, in the so-called gig economy, the tech economy. They've got these ghastly accounting rules, IR35, which are a disaster for freelancers.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Whatever you say about Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss, they recognised that, and they were trying to overturn these IR35 regulations. No hint of that today at all.
No.
Very little for small businesses in this budget, and for a Tory Chancellor to not understand that small businesses are the bedrock of their support, that's just unforgivable.
Yeah. How out of touch do you think the Conservatives are with start-up businesses like yours?
Way out of touch. Way out of touch.
You did very well to keep it polite. I'm very pleased about that. Thank you. Let's see a few hands up who'd like to ask a question or raise a comment. Who's got something to say on this issue earlier? There's a gentleman just there in the front row. If a microphone can be got, please. Give us your name, please, sir.
My name's Adam. I'm just wondering, I've heard a lot of talk recently about a Conservative budget. Now, I'm not more economically inclined, economically liberal than maybe yourself or many other people around the room. I'm more, I say, economically left, but I'm also identified as a conservative. Now, this budget, while I disagree with it, isn't the best, but what is your definition of a conservative government, and what would you do? Obviously, don't go in great detail, but generally, what would you do to make a conservative government? Budget, sorry.
My traditional thinking was that the Conservative Party was pro-business. Maybe socially, it wasn't always as good at looking after people as the Labour Party was, but it was pro-business. And the Thatcher argument was businessmen and women make money, make wealth, employ people, pay taxes, and then we can afford to have hospitals. Then we can afford to have all those things that make life nice. And I genuinely think that these people on the front benches of both the Conservative and the Labour parties are so far away from gentlemen like Nicholas here. They don't understand what commercial businesses is. All very well and good going to Oxford and getting your degree and working in a research office. How many of these people have actually been out, taken risk, created wealth, employed people, and lost money and seen the bad times as well? And I would have thought the Conservative government should try to be small state, low tax, pro-business. They are none of those things. And frankly, I don't think you can put an increasingly heavily taxed cigarette paper now between the Conservative and Labour parties. Liam.
A couple of weekends ago, Nigel, I did what you do so well. I had lunch, and I had lunch with somebody called Nigel Lawson, who was, of course, a Tory Chancellor between 1983 and 1989, somebody who cut corporation tax from 52%, somebody who cut the top rate of income tax from 60 to 40%. Nigel Lawson told me, and he's very old and in his own words very frail now, he's 91, he's just had his birthday, probably in his last interview, he told me that he thinks today's Conservative Party are going to have to completely reinvent themselves, and they're not going to do that with the current leadership. There's no way, I think, that Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt have got it in them to push back against this Treasury orthodoxy, to get us out of this high tax, low growth, low productivity doom loop. The tax burden is now the highest it's been since the days of Clement Attlee, and that's not the right place to be, in my view, for a modern economy.
Time for one more quick question. Anybody else desperate? Madam in the front row there. One moment. Well, I know you want to get in there, but hang on a sec.
Hello, my name's Jackie. I just want to go back to the MP earlier on, when he sat there and he said, because of the pension, you know, being able to put that people can now have their hip replacements. You can't have a hip replacement unless you've got a nurse, a junior doctor, cleaning staff, booking staff, you know, all these other people take, you know, the surgeon can do the operation, but all those other people, so other people need more money.
Yeah, no, of course, it's a team effort, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, I mean, he was trying to put an optimistic spin on the budget, I think, which, if you're a Conservative member of Parliament representing Doncaster these days, is quite tough.
Well, I'm an ex-nurse and I paid into an NHS pension and I'm still paying tax. I would have liked the threshold to come down a little bit. Now, whether they're saving that for the next...
the next budget will be before a general election, and guess what? They'll cut taxes and say, isn't it all going wonderfully? In a moment, it's time for Talking Pints. Ian Snodden has been player-manager of Doncaster Rovers. We're going to talk a bit about Doncaster, the football club, and what it means to be from Doncaster and to play football for the local team.
Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight, in an exclusive interview, the former Home Secretary, Priti Patel, delivers her frank and honest verdict on high-tax Hunt's so-called budget for growth. Tune in for a rare insight into one of the Conservatives' sharpest political minds as she lays out her vision for a better Britain. Don't miss Dan Wootton Tonight, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Okay, it's Talking Pints with a very lively crowd here in Doncaster. I'm joined by Ian Snodden, local soccer star, football manager, player for the local club. Cheers.
Cheers. I better have a drink.
Now, these are GB News Talking Pints branded glasses, and if you want one, you can go, yes, you really can, to gbnews.store. I know you'll be rushing there in your thousands. Now, Ian, we've talked about money, we've talked about budgets, and really quite, in many ways, rather depressing things. But we're going to talk about you, which hopefully is a bit happier. So, born just down the road.
I was born in Thriber, in Rotherham, which is probably about 8 to 9 miles away. And but my affinity with Doncaster Rovers goes back many years. My brother Glyn, everybody will know, who watched Rovers. My brother Glyn, 3 years older than me, played for the Rovers before I did, and then I joined them from school at 16 years old.
You were, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You did, by your own admission, you weren't that good at school.
I wasn't, no. I wasn't the brightest, but I was all right at football, PE.
And this was the thing you wanted to do?
I did. I went into a careers meeting, and the careers officer was sat there and he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to play football. And he looked at me and he went, 1% play football. I said, well, my brother plays, I think I'm better than him. And it proved to be, I was better than him.
Yeah.
So I just looked at my brother, Glenn, and I just wanted to play football.
Why do younger brothers always think they're better?
Do you know what? Growing up with Glenn and playing at his age group as well, 3 years above, helped me massively.
Because that's the interesting thing, isn't it? You actually, and of course, this club at the time had a manager who was a pretty legendary football figure going back to those years.
Do you want Nigel? I absolutely adored the man. I didn't like him. I was a Chelsea fan as growing up. Because in the 1970 Cup final, Leeds played Chelsea.
We're talking, folks, about Billy Bremner.
Billy Bremner.
Who was a little fella, defender.
Hard as nails.
The game was a bit rougher in those days, wasn't it?
It was well rougher, to be quite honest. But I was a Chelsea fan, didn't like Leeds United, but when he came to Doncaster Rovers, he signed me as a schoolboy, and wow, did I take to him. I absolutely adored the man.
And you were playing for the side, aged...
16.
16?
Yeah, I'd just left school. 5 months later, I made my debut against Bournemouth, and I was actually substitute. Billy was player manager then, and Dave Bentley, a player who was getting on in age, had gone down injured, and Billy just looked at me at 16-year-old and went, "Get warmed up." With about 18 minutes to go, and I thought, kind of in my belly, I was kind of sick. I'm thinking 16, I'm going on in an old 4th division game, which were very, very aggressive players in it, but excited as well. And I wanted to get on, and I actually went on for Dave Bentley, and I played alongside Billy Bremner for 18 minutes. And wow, what a feeling. He told me where to go, he told me when to pass it, he made it so ridiculously easy for me.
But you were quite, really quite a prodigy, weren't you? Because you were captaining the team at a very young age.
I captained them at 18, he gave me the captaincy. Yeah, it was quite strange because my brother was 21, so I was captain above him. We had several experienced players as well, and for Billy to give me the captaincy at 18, he must have thought that I were captain material, and I got something about me.
Well, he believed in you, clearly, very, very much, gave you your big break, and time goes on, and you marry a girl.
I did. I married a girl, local girl, Joanne. She had Rita and Joe's cafe in the marketplace, so they owned that, and I used to go in for my free lunches, and I had 5 children to her. I've got 9 grandchildren, and they're all living in Doncaster.
And you built a house in Doncaster called?
I did. I built a house near Barnby Dun, Norththorpe Power Station. I built one out there and I called it Bremner Lodge. and I called it that because if I got a nice house, and I thought if it wasn't for Billy Bremner, I wouldn't have had a nice house.
No, it's terrific.
So
you have your playing days, and then, Doncaster Rovers go through their ups and downs, and of course, in these lower divisions, money, always an issue with clubs. But in the end, you come back and you're player manager.
I was playing at Scarborough. I'd still got another year left. Doncaster Rovers had gone down into the conference. They were getting crowds of 400 by then. It goes to the old chairman. He didn't want to have a Doncaster Rovers team, apparently. He didn't want a team in Doncaster. So the crowds were 400. They approached me and my brother Glyn and said, would you come back as manager and assistant? And we took the opportunity. And at the time, we didn't have anywhere to train. We didn't have a ball. We didn't have any kit. We didn't have anything. Doncaster Rovers, nobody would sponsor them. They had it rock bottom. They were going out. And I remember the chairman who took over when I got the job, John Ryan, I remember him carrying a coffin with loads of supporters from Doncaster Town Centre to the ground because they didn't think that Doncaster Rovers were going to exist after that last game. So when I came in as manager, I had 7 players left at the club. I had 2 weeks to get a team. And our first game was down at Dover. Couldn't be any further away for the Rovers fans. So we took that day, 15th of August, never forget it because it's my birthday.
It's mine too.
Is it? We took 1,500 fans down to Dover.
Wow.
And then we played Southport on the Tuesday for our first home game. And I'm sat in my little office, I picked the team, 8:15 kick-off, it's 7:15. I get a knock on my door and it's a sergeant police, and I thought, he went, can I have a word? I'm thinking,
what now?
It's the old chairman back at the club, what's happening? And he went, Ian, we're going to have to delay the kick-off. I said, why? He went, come with me. We went to the front door of Doncaster Rovers' ground, and he went, that's why. And there were about 15 queues of people, 200 yards long. Our crowd that night were 4,500.
Did you save Doncaster Rovers?
Yeah. I don't like saying I did.
No. Come on. If you hadn't done what you'd done, would this club
I
even
thought
exist?
the people of Doncaster, like me and Glyn, as football players, knew what we meant to Doncaster Rovers, and I think they give their support for me and Glyn and Doncaster Rovers.
Well, it's fantastic. A couple of lovely local stories. Tell us about Le Bistro.
Does anybody know about Dennis Mullally and the Bistro? There used to be a local paper come out every Thursday, the Free Press, and Dennis Mullally had put, and he didn't know anything about football, Dennis. He don't know anything about anything, Dennis. He's a brilliant friend of mine. He has been for 40 years. But he put in the paper Free Press, anybody who scores for Doncaster Rovers, they can come in and have a free meal. So the week later, I'm about 18-year-old, I've scored the goal, we've won 1-0. So I thought, I'll go down and see Dennis. So I text my mate in as well. So he said to me, I said, Dennis, Ian Snowden, Doncaster Rovers, have scored the goal. He went, come in. I said, this is my friend as well. He said, yeah, come in, have what you want. I had never had a fillet steak at 18-year-old. I hadn't. Yeah. And I'm thinking, I looked at the menu and I thought, that looks the most expensive thing. I did. I said, I'll have the fillet steak. He went, how do you want it cooking? And now I'm thinking, how do I want it cooking? So my mate just said, get it well done, safe side. So I said, well done, please. So we had a fillet steak. So the week later, we're playing Brentford away in London. We get beat 2-0. So we're on the way back, and I've summed Dennis up, and I'm thinking, he don't know who Rovers players are. He ain't got a clue about football. So I just said to Dave Hall, who used to play, same age as me, and I said, Dave, I'm starving, are you? On his way back from London, I went, we'll go into Dennis's place in Bistro and tell him we've won 2-0. Seriously. I said, me and you have scored. I said, he won't have a clue who we are. And we'll get... So we goes in and he went, hey lads, he went, you're that young lad that scored last week. I said, yeah, me and Dave scored. We've won 2-0 down at Brentford. He went, come in, and he's pulled 2 chairs out for us. He's even given us a sweet. We had chocolate fudge cake as well.
I love it.
Seriously. We took him, and then we went for a walk round Silver Street, had a few pints. So his wife, Carol, the next day, she's reading the paper, and she went, oh, any at Rovers boys in? He went, oh yeah, that young lad Snowden and his mate Dave Hall come in, they won 2-0, they both scored. She went, says in my paper here, Brentford 2, Doncaster Rovers 0. And he went, they've had me over big time.
It's a lovely story.
It's brilliant.
You've been, of course, you're Doncaster Rovers Hall of Fame, everything. You're now, a few seconds left on the show, you're acting as an ambassador across the other side of the Pennines for Everton, who for the first time in their history are going to go down, aren't they?
No, they're not. Don't say that. They're not going down. But yeah, I signed for Everton. It were a big thing, either Everton or Liverpool. I chose Everton. Yeah. And I'm now still employed after 36 years by Everton as a club ambassador.
Well, you know what, Ian, I can tell with your enthusiasm and your optimism that whatever you do, you give it absolutely 100%. Big hand for Ian Snowden.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nigel.
Very good. Well, that's it from Doncaster. We are finished for the evening. I think if I have to sum up the budget in one word today, it is underwhelming. And from that, let's go to the all-important weather. And we're done. It's over. Woo!
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office with me, Annie Shuttleworth. Thursday is going to be a much milder day than today, as we've got milder Atlantic air pushing up, being dragged up behind this warm front, which has been tracking across the country through the day, bringing many outbreaks of rain. So it's been a pretty wet day across the UK, and through this evening we'll continue to see some quite heavy rain and snow as that rain falls into the colder air across Scotland. So there are still warnings in force through this evening and into the early hours of Thursday. Further south, we'll see a drier night, but we'll see a brisk southerly breeze, and that will pick temperatures up through the night. So temperatures will increase by the time we get to the early hours of Thursday. So tomorrow will be a milder start than this morning. However, across parts of Wales, northwest England and southern Scotland, there's still a rain warning in force, so there could be some traffic on the roads. Then as we head through the afternoon, things will tend to become a little bit drier, and temperatures again are still climbing up above average, so feeling milder than it will have done today. However, across parts of Northern Ireland, though the skies will brighten, there's a risk of thundery showers through the afternoon and into Thursday evening. Generally, though, overnight it'll be a drier and clearer night, but still with that milder air, that stiff southerly breeze, we'll continue to see temperatures above average overnight, so frost-free for much of the UK, some areas staying in double digits well into the start of Friday. So Friday will be a bit of a mixed picture depending on whereabouts you are. But more southern areas could see the threat of thundery downpours. Dry to start through many central and eastern areas, but that risk of thundery showers does spread eastwards as we head through the afternoon. An unsettled day on Saturday, but still rather mild and perhaps turning a bit cooler into the start of next week.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9,